Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Happy Tuesday. While we wait on everyone to join the meeting, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead in the chat and just put any organization that you represent today, your pronouns, and what city and state you're connecting with us from today. I'm always curious where people are joining us from. And we'll get started in just a moment. I can always count on Sanctuary of Hope.
Mhm.
Hello, Los Angeles. Thank you for joining us so early. Lots of Arizona representation in the house today. Good morning, everyone. New Jersey, Louisiana, Alabama. As a Southerner, I appreciate all the Southern representation. Ooh, a safe space specialist. Love safe space. Just about another minute and we will go ahead and kick things off. Just to let everyone know, I don't know if you've ever attended a webinar with me, but I love to engage and I love to hear from you. So I hope you're energized and ready and have had your coffee or tea or whatever centers you in the morning, because we'll have some questions for you and ways for you to participate. It's really important for our organization to be able to hear from you. It's how we grow and learn. This is a two-way street. We know everyone is coming in to learn from us today, but there's also lots of opportunities for you guys to share and educate us as well. So as we go throughout the presentation today, look out for a few different poll questions and ways to engage. And then if we have time at the end, we will definitely be available to answer any questions that you have. And we'll also share our direct contact information to make sure that you can connect with us offline if you need to. So with that, I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar, a part of our spring webinar series. It's called Lessons Learned, Providing Crisis Contact Over Digital Platforms. Before we get started, I do also want to take a moment to give a shout out to any representation that we have in the house from FISB or the Administration for Children and Families. I really appreciate anyone, of course, from any organization who was able to join, but I do want to give a special shout out to our friends at FISB. My name is Christopher Smith. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at the National Runaway Safeline, and I am going to help facilitate things today. And then I'm also joined by Sam Gillis, our Chief Program Officer at the National Runaway Safeline, who will be leading the majority of the presentation and conversation today. So with that, I'll give Sam an opportunity to introduce herself if you would like, Sam.
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Christopher. And just echoing all of Christopher's gratitude. My name's Sam Gillis. I use she, her pronouns. I oversee programs here at NRS. We are based in Chicago, but obviously a nationwide organization. Really excited to be here with you today and help share the lessons learned. And also, as Christopher mentioned, learn some stuff from you all. So thanks for joining.
Yes, this webinar will also be recorded and available on our YouTube channel shortly after the presentation. I'll make sure to send out an email with instructions on how to find that for you all. And again, if you have any questions afterwards, you'll be able to email me directly. So why don't we go ahead and kick things off with the first slide, Sam? So first, I want to start off with a poll question, which is your current organization currently using digital platforms to engage with young people? And just to clarify, by digital platforms, I mean pretty much anything online. So of course, yes, like digital social media, but that also includes things like online forums, chat services that you offer online, things like that. So keep that in mind. Can everyone see the poll? Okay, perfect. I see it now, actually. So the poll should have just popped up for you. If you could just give us a yes, no, or unsure. Oh, perfect. So right off the bat, it looks like about half of us are currently engaging with young people through digital platforms, which is great. We're in the digital era, so it's always great to see people taking advantage of the tools that we have available to connect with young people and meet them where they are. I'll give people just another minute or two. It looks like there's a few people that haven't answered, and I do want to try to capture a full picture of our audience today. Hello to everyone that's still joining. If you missed the very earliest moments of this presentation, don't worry, you're not late. We're still just getting started. But if you could take the time to put the name of any organization that you represent, your pronouns, and what city and state that you are joining us from in the chat, that would be really helpful. And we also have just launched a question asking if your organization currently uses digital platforms to engage with young people. So we'll go ahead and Sam, if you want to close the poll. So again, yeah, it looks like we are a bit over 50% of everyone in the room is currently using digital platforms to engage with young people. So no matter where you are in this, we hope that you'll take a lot from this. And again, if you have any questions, please make sure to hold those questions, or you can drop them in the chat and we'll make sure to address those for you. Ooh, still have some people joining. That's awesome. All right, Sam, if you want to go to the next slide. All right, so just for anyone who isn't familiar with the National Runaway Safeline, the National Runaway Safeline, our mission is essentially to ensure that young people who have run away or are experiencing homelessness or any of the intersections of homelessness are safe and off the streets. We specialize in resources, educational tools, and training opportunities focused on prevention and early intervention for people ages 10 to 24. And that age range has changed over the last few years because we've seen an increase in the number of younger people who are reaching out to us. And I will also say that despite our focus being on that age range, we will always help anyone who ever calls us the best that we can. If you may be more familiar with 1-800-RUNAWAY, which is the federally designated national communication system for young people aged 12 to 21 who are experiencing crisis, who have run away or are considering leaving home and are experiencing homelessness. We also have an incredible youth advisory board comprised of young people that have lived experience who are tremendously helpful in helping make sure that we essentially know what we're talking about, that we know what young people are thinking and where we can meet them to make sure that we can offer the help and assistance that they need. Every year, we make about 125,000 different connections to offer help through our hotline and online and offline resources. Next slide, Sam. To give a little bit more of a drill down on what we do, again, mentioning 1-800-RUNAWAY, if you give us a call at 1-800-RUNAWAY, or if since September you send us a live text because we have introduced live texting, you will always reach one of our crisis services representatives. We're able to translate in over 200 different languages and offer telecom relay services, of course. Our approach to supporting people is always trauma-informed, solution-focused, and we also offer information referrals. We can do messaging services, conference calls, everything you think of. Our trademark program is called Home Free. It's a family reunification and transportation program, meaning that we're helping to get young people who have left home an opportunity to get back home for free or to a safe alternative living arrangement if home is not the safest place. Alternatively, you can also reach us online at 1-800-RUNAWAY.org, where we'll offer live chat, email, and an online forum, which actually is still a huge part of the traffic that we get on our website is actually through our forum. It's a really incredible place for young people and adults, concerned adults, parents, whoever, to get information and to see what other young people are talking about, what type of questions they're asking. A lot of the times the answers are available there for people to see because they don't feel comfortable necessarily reaching out to us, but they want to start figuring out how they can seek help. So the forum is a really great place to not have to necessarily engage with some people, but still get lots of help, lots of information, and understand some of the resources. Next slide, Sam. When it comes to our referrals and resources, we maintain a huge database of about 6,500 different agencies and services across the country, literally in every state. And that includes things like basic centers and shelters. We can offer medical assistance, street outreach programs, which are huge. We get a lot of calls from people who are looking for access to food. We also can access different McKinney Bento liaisons. So if you have young people that are like seeking educational opportunities, we can help with that. And we also connect with other crisis hotlines. We understand that we are not the experts in everything. So we, of course, partner with different hotlines to make sure that we are always giving the best and most useful information. If your organization is not a part of our database, I will make sure to give information in the chat about how to reach out to us. You can actually just go to 1-800-runaway.org/database. It's really easy to fill out a memorandum of understanding. You can also very easily connect with our database manager, Brad, who is really incredible about quickly helping facilitate either getting you added to our database or getting your information in our database updated. And I've seen over the past couple of years that we've gotten to a point where a lot of organizations in our database are on an annual basis reaching out to us to make sure that not only we have the most updated information about them, but to also know what we're doing, make sure they have the most updated information on us as well. We offer free educational and free prevention and educational materials on our website, 1-800-runaway.org. That is everything from actual outreach materials, like we have these incredibly new designed palm cards that are really discreet and easy to hand to a young person, that has a very convenient QR code that they can scan to quickly access our services online. It also has our direct contact information. We have different social media graphics for you to use and post on your social media, and we will be beefing that up tremendously over the next month. You'll see lots of new and updated materials going up on our free materials page at 1-800-runaway.org/free materials. We also have some other things that you might not be familiar with or might not think of as prevention materials, like our Let's Talk podcast, which is a podcast where we talk directly either to service providers or young people with lived experience about their experience. We give them the opportunity to talk about what worked, what didn't work, what they'd like to see, their hopes and dreams and things like that. We offer a 16 module Let's Talk Runaway Prevention curriculum, which has recently been updated and is continuing to be refreshed and updated. It's a really incredible tool for young people to understand homelessness or for organizations to use to beef up their own prevention methods. We have a blog where we post regularly about our volunteers and the things happening at NRS, but also you will find lots of great information. Like I know we recently posted a blog about the different materials that shelters are often requesting. We have blogs about what McKinney Bento is. So there's lots of educational materials there. And of course, we also lead National Runaway Prevention Month, which will more than likely be receiving a new name at for this year. So if you've partnered with us at National Runaway Prevention Month before, of course, I'd love to see you here, and I'd love to see you to continue to partner with us as we go through the name change for that. And if you haven't, I highly encourage you to learn more about National Runaway Prevention Month and what we do and what that will be looking like in the future by visiting 1-800-runaway.org/NRPM. More importantly, something that we have beefed up a lot over the last couple of years is being able to provide not only national data, but data at a state level. So you can actually reach out to us. Actually, if you visit our website, we readily have available the most updated data. So we are currently working through our 2023 data, which has all of the information about who's contacting us, why they say they're contacting us, and things like that. But we can also drill this down to a state level, and secretly, we can also drill it down to even further, sometimes to like a specific area code or county level to help make sure that you have the most local information that's available to you if we can pull that. It all depends on, of course, who is reaching out to us. If I'll make sure again at the end to provide any information on how to collect that data when Sam takes over the presentation. I'll drop that in the chat for everyone. Now, just a few key data and trends before we really jump into the world of digital platforms. I want to make sure that you understand how it all looks from our end. So first, how crisis contacts reached NRS. We, of course, offer calls, chats, texts, emails, and forum posts. I will note that we just launched our live texting platform in September of 2023. So that's a really new service. I'm really, of course, excited to see how it plays off over the course of a full year so we can report a full year's worth of data. But you'll see the majority of the contacts that we are getting are coming from a digital platform. So chats, emails, and forums are dominating the methods for young people reaching out to us, young people and concerned adults. And the number of chats is increasing year by year. I imagine, of course, that next year when we report text, fingers crossed, there'll be a much larger percent of people who are taking advantage of the discretion offered through texting rather than actually having to physically call us. But we will always be available to physically talk to anyone. And specific programs like our Home Free program, we actually do need to physically talk to you in order to do some verification things to help make sure we're talking to the right people and doing everything to protect the young people who may want to use that service. These are some of the top reasons identified as to why young people or concerned adults are reaching out to National Runaway Safeline. I want to note that this data is voluntary, so we're not capturing every single call. The person has to willingly offer this information to us. So it is a bit of an incomplete picture, but I think it paints a very clear picture of why young people are reaching out. Family dynamics has always, as long as I've been with the organization, been the number one reason. We've also always had emotional and verbal abuse and physical abuse over the past years. But I will say, since COVID specifically, economics, mental health, and peer and social issues have been on the rise as reasons for young people reaching out to us. We specifically last year saw a huge jump in economics, jumping all the way from not being in the top 5 to being number 2. And then the same with mental health. We've seen mental health over the past few years really become one of the core reasons why young people are reaching out to us. A lot of the times, our crisis service volunteers and crisis services staff say that young people often are reaching out just because they want a listening ear. They want to talk through their problems. So I'm not surprised that mental health has become one of the main reasons why young people are watching out, and that number continues to increase or fluctuate around this kind of like 22 to 25% area. And then I also like to talk about the social media metrics because any organization who does what we do online has probably seen a decrease in the amount of actual web traffic to their website. But hopefully, if they're playing their cards right, they're seeing this be offset by social media. And if they're really doing a good job, they're using their social media to direct people back to their website to even further offset that decrease in traffic. So what's important here is that like TikTok is a huge platform for young people. We get lots of people who message us directly, specifically on TikTok and Instagram, sometimes just asking very basic questions like, how old do you have to be to use your services? Or can you help me? And we will talk about like some of the ways that we engage with young people on social media, because it is a bit different from when they reach out to us directly on one of our digital platforms like our forum or our chat services. But I want to say that we get a huge amount of views on these channels, especially on places like TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, where we are very much so just doing social media outreach. But we also have places like our YouTube channel where we post things like this webinar, for instance, will be available on our YouTube channel. So it's a different way to access this educational resource that will hopefully help a lot of people. If you have any questions about the way that like social media, like impressions and things like that work, we're noticing that that's all changing. A lot of social media organizations are changing the way that they report their metrics. So it's kind of hard from year to year as they adjust understanding what is what. So I've done a lot of research on this and I am happy to help anyone. I get people that, especially during National Runaway Prevention Month, reach out specifically for help understanding how these metrics work and apply to their organization. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about that. Now, I want to drill down on our online forum metrics because, again, we see year after year that our forum actually gets a ton of traffic. Here you can see on the right side the main categories of our forum, which is family issues, legal issues, parenting, and relationships. These tend to be the core reasons why young people are reaching out, specifically in the family issues section. If you'll actually look, it may be a little bit hard to read. There's a forum post at the bottom of the page there. But what I want to point out is that through all of this text, before this post can go live, It's all written out by a young person. But before this post can be seen, we will have our crisis services staff review every post to make sure there is no personally identifying information in the post. And if there is, all of that is removed. So it's really important for us to still make sure that that question is asked so that we can like show people how we would respond to that. But we do take the time to make sure that there's no personally identifying information in the forum. It's a big part of us offering our services and being discreet. The word isn't discreet. We don't say anonymous, but we say, what is the word I'm looking for, Sam?
Confidential.
Confidential. There you go. See, this is what I'm talking about. I hope everybody has their coffee. So you can see we get a ton of legal issue questions on the forum. People asking things like, if I go stay with a friend, is that friend going to get in legal trouble, or will their parents get in legal trouble because I'm staying at their house? Is my parent allowed to hit me? That kind of thing. So the forum, again, is just a really tremendously helpful place for people who are not necessarily ready to like talk to someone about what they're going through, but they still want to find help. They still have questions. It's a really great resource that I think is actually underutilized. And I highly encourage people to start directing people towards that forum, just so they can see what other type of questions people their own age are asking in their own language even. Whenever you're ready, Sam, next slide. Oh, actually, I get to pass it over to Sam now, who is going to talk about our crisis intervention model.
Thanks, Christopher. Okay, so I think Christopher did a really great job of highlighting what NRS does, but in the context of this presentation, right, really that young people are reaching out to us. They prefer to do so through digital means. So it's really important that we as providers are responding in kind to be able to meet young people where they're at. In addition, I would just like to share that lost my train of thought. I'm just going to go over our crisis intervention model like a little bit here to contextualize some of the nuance that I'm going to be talking about. But before I get into that, I just want to launch another 2 poll questions to kind of gauge folks like where they are. I know that we launched the first one that was really talking about engagement, which is more of the social media posts about your organization, trying to get young people like aware of their services. I'm more curious now about your organization and if you're actively providing crisis intervention over those platforms. So let me go ahead and launch this next poll here. Okay. No. All right, let's launch that. Okay, so the question is your organization currently using digital platforms to provide crisis intervention services for young people? Okay, see we're close to getting all of our responses, but we're missing about like 15%. So I want to give folks an opportunity to share. Okay, looks like we're kind of trickling down here. So I'm gonna go ahead and attempt to share that. Okay, so it looks like right now about just north of 50% are not using digital platforms to actually provide that intervention service. That's not entirely surprising. It takes time to really shift that. It's very different than providing crisis intervention in person or over the phone. It does look like 18% though are, and 26% are kind of not sure. So this is great, helpful information for me. So as I go through here, I can contextualize what to share, what to point out. All right. Let me then launch the next question I have that's really building on that one. Is your organization currently exploring, so thinking about using digital platforms to provide crisis intervention services for young people? Or are you actively like setting up that service? So are you working towards it? Watch that. Okay. Just gonna spend about like 30 seconds on that. Okay. About 75% done, so I'm gonna go ahead and end it. Um, all right, so what we can see here is that we're not sure, mostly, if that's a direction your organization is looking to go in. About a quarter are saying, yes, we are looking to start exploring this, and then 30% said, no, that's not on the horizon. So that's super helpful information. Okay, let's get into it here. So again, as I mentioned, I'm just going to briefly go over the NRS philosophy and our crisis intervention model more broadly and in general, just to kind of give us like a foundation and a platform for then the additional considerations that we use or how we pivot when we're talking about digital platforms. It's just an important kind of starting point. So NRS's philosophy really incorporates these 6 components. We're a non-judgmental service. That's really important for building rapport, as you can imagine. We want to meet young people where they're at and help support them with whatever they're going through. We're non-directive. That can be a shift from some practices, or just in general, the kind of adult to child relationship or expectation in our society. So we really aim to listen to young people and ask them questions to promote, you know, them seeking out their own options or figuring out a plan that makes best sense for them. So instead of saying, "Hey, I think you should go to this shelter," have you thought about what it would look like if you went to a shelter tonight? Instead of telling them what to do. We are a non-sectarian organization. So what that means is we do not take any stance on religion, spirituality, any potential values associated with a higher power. We are completely neutral, and the reason being for that is that we want any young person, whatever they value, however they walk through this life, to feel like they are safe and not judged, and that they can reach out for support. Um, we are also an honest service, so we think it's super important in order to build rapport with young people and also to empower them to make their own choices. To be honest, right? You can't make the best choices for you if you don't know what those options are or the potential adverse consequences of making a choice or the pros of making a certain choice. So we really believe in laying it all out there and letting young people decide what's best for them. That goes hand in hand with being empowering, right? We want to work with young people to build up their self-esteem, ensure that they know that they're valued and that they're capable of doing the things that they want to do or getting through something that's really challenging and difficult. And providing all of that information is a tool to help them really actualize or realize that. And then, as Christopher touched on before, we are a confidential service. So however young people reach out to NRS for support, whether that is through a phone call to our hotline, a live text, a live chat, an email, or a post on our online forum, we are going to be maintaining confidentiality, except in the rare circumstances, we are mandated reporters. So in the special circumstances that we know, of when a young person is providing specific details about themselves that would prompt mandated report, or when a young person is sharing that they are going to harm themselves or others, or when there's a situation of imminent risk. Okay, so using kind of all of that philosophy that is infused into this approach that we take. NRS does not use a specific interview protocol or an intake to work with young people. What we do instead is use this 5-step solutions-focused crisis intervention model that is really our model, that is incorporating a bunch of different best practice approaches. So trauma-informed care, harm reduction, positive youth development, solutions-focused brief therapy, right? And then with the mindset or the philosophy of what I previously shared. The aims of this approach really are to ensure that we are reaching all of these steps. That is why it's in a staircase. With that in mind, though, any conversation with anyone really, but especially in a moment of crisis or especially with young people, conversations aren't linear. They're often circular. You might go up a couple steps and back down. So really the aim is to move through these 5 steps that you see here, however that looks like in the course of a conversation. So those 5 steps are establishing rapport, exploring facts and feelings, focusing in on like the main or presenting issue at hand, or sometimes the presenting issue that you think is most important to work on might not be what the young person thinks. So really focusing in on what they think is most important, while also if there's a safety issue that might supersede wishes, keeping that in mind too. So focusing on that main issue, then exploring options, really based on options, what's there, what's available, where is the young person, are there any individual factors that need to be considered, or any factors within the community. So really pulling a lot of information together to present viable options to the young person. And then going from there, every response should be tailored and individualized to the young person. And then throughout the course of that conversation, right, we get to a point where a young person, we are solutions focused. So we're trying to get to a young person to establish a plan for themselves, or like close the conversation, if you will. Plans can be robust, or plans can be like, you know what, you've given me a lot to think about today. I'm going to really like digest this and maybe I'll reach back out to you. So they can be pretty small package, or they can be more robust and have varying steps and like a plan A and a plan B. We're going to talk a lot about establishing rapport through the digital sphere as we go. But okay, moving into next, and this is the last I'll kind of share about our general model. We also use active listening skills throughout that entire process. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are familiar with these. Active listening is proactive and interactive, and it's really meant to ensure that you are demonstrating interest and showing empathy, and helps promote rapport building as you have a conversation with a young person, any person. And it enables you to really check as you go the accuracy of the information that's being shared, seek clarity where you need it, and it encourages the conversation to keep going or get to the root of things. You can do that through a variety of different techniques that are posted there on the right side, but we're not going to get into kind of all of those right now. But a really easy way to just practice active listening is to use these kind of like encouraging statements of, I hear you, I understand, pausing, reflecting, taking a moment to say, hey, you said that you're doing this. Can you explain that further to me? Really just ensuring that you are listening to the conversation and giving the young person an opportunity to feel heard. So with all of that kind of general information, and I will say caveat, anytime that you all have any interest or questions about what that model looks like in more detail, I'm always open for questions, but I want to make sure that we get into the meat of what we want to talk about here. So all that in mind, how do we use this foundation and consider some of like the nuances or things that might come up in a digital platform that might not come up, or may come up, but might be like harder to maneuver in a digital space when you're not speaking with someone and you're not listening to their voice or working with them directly in person. So I'm going to launch one more poll. I believe it is our final poll. And this will kind of tee up some of what I'm going to talk about next. So, what type of communication do you all think is most commonly represented in conversation? So let me launch that here. Okay, so again, question is, what type of communication is represented most in conversation? Got about 60% of folks participating. Let's try to get it to at least 75. Okay. So what we have here is pretty divided. We've got 42% that think verbal, 17% think paraverbal, and then 42% say nonverbal. Okay, let's see what it is. It is actually nonverbal. So, nonverbal is really the cues that come through in the way that you're like standing or showing up in a conversation without using your words, right? So that could be how close you're standing to somebody. If you're talking in their face, it could mean that you are angry, right? And you're getting in their personal space. Posture, right? If I'm like leaning back like this, that could, and I'm going to say everything as in the context of could, it could mean I'm not interested or I'm tired. Um, if I'm moving around, like kind of walking, I could be pacing, I could be agitated. If I'm using my hands when I talk, I'm a big hand talker. It could mean I'm really animated and I'm really into what I'm talking about. Um, Paraverbal means, and this is one we often miss or we kind of categorize as nonverbal. Paraverbal is volume, tone, and like the rate at which you're speaking. So if I'm talking really, really loud, I might be angry. I might be excited. Tone. If you're like, I don't really think that that's the best way you could do that. You can hear the judgment in my voice versus saying, I'm not sure that was the best way to move forward. Have you thought about how we could do this differently? That is sends a direct message, but it does not have that laced judgment within it. The rate or cadence that you're speaking, if you are speaking super fast, it could mean that you're agitated or you're really worked up or potentially under the influence of substances. Same thing with being speaking slowly. That could mean you are detached, upset, tired, perhaps a different substance. Like there are a lot of different possibilities there, but these are things that we pick up on in communication when we are often with a person in person. I'm sure that you all can think back to personal experiences there where that resonates. And then verbal is what you're saying, the words that are coming out of your mouth, not the tone, not the movement that goes with it, the actual words. And when you package that all together, you create a picture of the conversation, the sentiments, the behavior associated with it. It really gives you a lot of information about where to go next. So I share that all right now to keep in mind as we go through doing crisis intervention that might not be in person. Think about here like what you might lose in a conversation, right? if 55% is nonverbal, if you're not in a room together, you already lose 50% of your means of trying to communicate. So that means you need to focus in more on those other areas to make sure that you are heard and to make sure that you're looking out for other things that can help give you some cues or clues. So then take it a step further. When you're not on the phone, you don't have that asset of a voice. It can be harder to understand like the paraverbals. Some of that can come through and like the rate at which somebody's texting might not. But so that's just important to keep in mind as you go, you get to the more digital means. I know personally, I've received text messages and I'm like, why did somebody put like a period at the end of that? Are they mad at me? So there's little things where tone or the way you do something can just cause people to not be on the same page. So it's really important to be mindful of. Okay, so with that in mind, communication when you're working over a digital platform, and I have live chat and text here. I'm going to go through and talk about our 5 platforms of communications and then provide some caveats. But across the board, if you are working in a digital space, communication must be even more intentional so you can start to build rapport in an effective way and relay information as you intend to. Okay. For the reasons I just described, all you have is the words that you're typing. Remember to personalize the conversation. This is a big piece of feedback that we received from our youth advisory board. If you are operating as part of an organization responding to any type of digital communication, in an auto reply, you might say like we, if you are talking about, representing the organization broadly. But once you're in it, once you are a live person, it's really important to say, I'm here for you instead of we're here for you, and build that one-on-one connection. So from there too, as I mentioned, tone may be harder to communicate. It might be harder for you to communicate, but it also might be harder to understand. And so it's really important to be aware of that, one, and two, know that you can ask like, hey, you sent this, like, you maybe sound like you're a little upset. Is that true? Like, ask for clarification where you don't have it, or where you're not sure. Also, silence and long pauses when you're communicating with someone over those means kind of leaves you in the dark. It might be harder to interpret what that means. It could be, someone's just pausing to think about what they need to say. It could be they're frustrated and they don't want to text you back right now. So just some things to be mindful of. And so you can kind of counteract it or follow up. Hey, I'm not sure how that text was received, how it made you feel. Please let me know if you don't want to continue talking right now. Know that you can reach back out when you want to. So it's really like about being aware of these things and figuring out how you can fill the negative space or get clarification. What else here? In line with all of that, behavioral and emotional cues may be harder to identify. I will say some of that can come through with how a young person is texting. If it's like super fast or kind of jumbled or all over the place, that may be indicating that they are in a rush, that they are in an escalated state. If they are slower to respond, that could mean that they're less escalated. Again, though, that's all contextual. It could depend on someone's personal preference. You don't know, but it's something to be aware of. And I think as you get through conversation, you can kind of learn a style more and make those inferences in order to help you navigate the conversation. Then it's really important, right? This is important in all contexts, especially when you're not in a room with a person. Age and or development of a young person might be more difficult to gauge over those platforms, especially if somebody doesn't tell you, this is how old I am, or I struggle with this. So important to keep in mind as you go. And again, I think something that you might be able to tease out as you talk longer. But as you kind of have that conversation, it becomes more apparent where, like, what level of communication might work best for that young person. And I think in general, we've learned that it's better to avoid like big, complicated adult words in order to just meet a young person where they're at, but match them, right? In the way that they're talking, if it is respectful, obviously. But if you see that they have a pretty wide vocabulary, certainly lean into that. But if it's clear to you that you need to speak in kind of more basic terms, definitely do that. Okay. So a little more just like tips and tricks as it relates to a live chat or a live text interface. And really this could be extrapolated into like direct messages or DMs. Really, like, these platforms are anything that kind of looks like that, the one-to-one communication in a private space. These are things that can work. So we found that with young people in particular, it's really helpful to send shorter streaming messages. So like texts in a row versus taking time to write out like a very long, thoughtful paragraph, because you can lose the attention span. So it's important, again, as I mentioned, to be very intentional about what you're saying, but maybe like a sentence or a statement at a time, to keep that combo going. Also, yeah, really important to just check your spelling, limit some potential errors that could come with that. Um, and then emojis. You can use emojis. That is a pro and a con. So just be aware of that. Emojis help you, it might help you build rapport with a young person, might make you feel relatable, might make you feel, right, like you're not talking to this entity and more so like a person one to one. It can kind of make the conversation like less formal, if you will. A con of that, like, I don't know about you all, but I think I'm pretty good with emojis, but sometimes I really don't know what they mean. So you might get one where you're like, I don't know what this reaction is. So it's also appropriate to clarify and be like, hey, I think it means this, but does this mean this?
Mhm.
You can always ask. Um, and so, yeah, that's that reminder there. I also want to present kind of the caveat here that we've got a mix of folks on here that are looking to or are already engaging in crisis intervention over these platforms. Um, and there can be nuances or differences between if you are texting or chatting within kind of like this formal system that's set up to integrate with like your database. Um, that's one way to be, engaging in messaging back and forth. Then there's more of the direct person to person, like I'm a young person that I've worked with or worked with in the past is texting me directly. So all of that kind of stuff can be used in both circumstances. And I'm going to go over some safety tips here in a minute that can also be employed in both of those kind of realms. But then I'm also going to jump to some technical considerations if you are working on setting up more of like a service that integrates with like your database, um, uh, for whatever organization you work with. I've spoken with a couple of folks that are trying to set that up for like a state hotline or a local hotline that they operate. Okay. So safety is super important. We know that. As with any type of crisis intervention, establishing immediate safety and how long you have to talk to somebody is critical, whether it's in person, whether it's on the phone, even more so important when you're not with them. So do that first. Hey, thank you so much for reaching out. This was really brave of you to do. Or I'm glad you reached out. It's good to hear from you again. Just want to quickly check and make sure you're in a safe space to talk to me. Is anybody around you that you need to be mindful of? Like, is anyone harmful around? Are you in a safe space? Young person says yes, you can move forward with the conversation. Okay, do I have enough time to talk to you? Like, how much time do you have to talk? That can help guide like how deep or how acute the conversation needs to be in this moment in time. How much battery do you have on your phone? Are you in a place where you can charge it? Stuff like that. Um, What's really, really important to think about, this is important for phone calls too, to delete call history if that's a concern for someone. But over digital communications, it's not only that you called, you've got the receipts, right? So if a young person is worried about someone seeing the details of their conversation, it's really important to let them know that they can delete it. If that's more of like an imminent thing and someone's around them, you can encourage them to delete as they go. So that's true more so for like texting and like a direct messaging situation. Um, let's see. If you're working with someone that's chatting with you, you can also encourage them to delete their web history that they reached out to NRS or to any other service that you operate. Um, what we found is really helpful at NRS, and this may or may not be helpful for you, is that we use conversation timeout warnings largely for safety purposes. So if you're talking with someone and they kind of drop off the radar for 10, 15 minutes, their situation could have changed, right? And we don't want to be sending them tons of text messages if it's like not a safe space to do that and they're getting notifications. Or if they're in like their DMs and somebody is over their shoulder or they're watching it, that might be something that's relevant for them and their experience. It might not be, but it's good to be mindful of. And you actually can kind of figure out a lot of that during an immediate safety check. Um, what we do to just ensure that we're not stepping into any territory that could make someone unsafe is we just say up front, hey, I just want to let you know, if they haven't responded in a couple of minutes, we're going to say, hey, if we don't hear from you in 10 minutes, I'm going to have to stop sending these messages. You can reach back out anytime, or I'll wait for you to reach out. That way they know they can reach out whenever we put them in charge of the conversation. And then one other point regarding safety that I think is really important, confidentiality. So it can be more difficult to determine if the person you're talking to is the person they say they are over digital platforms. So it could be helpful to employ some safeguards there. One way to do that could be like coming up with a code word or like a safe type word. So you could set that up. Say, you know, if I reach back out and I say green, it's me, and we can start talking. It's usually more personal words, but you could set that up too as just like another layer of safety or verification. In more of like the technical realm, I just want to share a couple of quick things. So, if you are setting up a service or if you have the ability to use this, we find it very helpful, especially if you're working in like a high traffic environment where you're getting a lot of texts or a lot of messages or a lot of calls. So setting up initial auto replies. At NRS, all of the communications that we have with young people are live with live agents, but we do send out auto replies or messages that are like, hey, we got your message and we'll be with you shortly. That can be really, really helpful to set expectations with young people. So just communicating that there might be a short wait and we'll get you connected with an advocate or crisis worker very soon. It's really important too to provide that context for if this is an emergency, reach out to 911, or if you need to call us, please do that instead. Because especially with there's 2 points here. So with live chats, generally, if you do an initial chat and you send an auto reply, more often than not, a young person can't continue to reach out to you until that chat has like been accepted by somebody to work on. So they actually can't even get in touch with you. If you're talking about a text message, that's different though. So you could send an auto reply and say, hey, hold on, please wait, and we'll be with you shortly. That does not block a young person from continuing to send you messages. So just something to be mindful of. In a slide or two, I'm going to show you some ways that we mitigate that. Um, let's see. It's also important if you are using any sort of auto reply, it's important to create like a distinction between the two of, hey, I'm here now, or thanks so much for waiting. What can I help you with today? So the person knows that they're now talking to a live, real person. Um, and then just be mindful of however you set your system up, you may have the ability to collect some information prior to a conversation that can help guide you. You may elect not to do that. Sometimes it can be helpful, and framing it in a way that's you can voluntarily share this information that if you want to, but you don't have to. And then with both of those types of communications, you often have the ability to send out surveys afterwards. If that's something that is important for your organization to say, hey, did you get what you needed today? Or how could we be better? There's often that option. Just some quick distinctions. I did mention this already. I did mention the first point. Another really important point with text specifically is that a young person will have right what was said, or a DM. It will be in there that they can come back and pick up on later. With that in mind, a young person may think, and it may be true that they can pick up the conversation. It may not be. With us, we kind of cut a conversation off if we don't hear from them in 10 minutes, right? But if they reach back out, we start the conversation as new. So if that is how you operate, it's just important that you say it. So you are sharing expectations. Um, and then on the flip side, texting and direct messages are actually really helpful in the sense of if you share resources over that, they can be retained and accessed at a later time. So a lot of this is about figuring out what works for you based on some of the tips and tricks or lessons learned. I did mention auto reply. So these are just kind of two examples that we use, and by no means need to use them, but they're very basic and they work for us. So when someone texts us, we send out two initial auto replies. It says, thanks so much for reaching out to NRS. We received your text, but there may be a short wait time before we can respond. Please do not send more texts until we text, hi, I'm here now. We'll be with you soon. At any time, if you'd like to end the conversation, please let us know. That hi, I'm here now is the way that we've worked through being able to distinguish between the auto reply and a live person. So that second auto reply will be sent right after that saying, to the effect of if you're in immediate danger or someone else is, please call 911. But after that, those messages are in our queue. And once one of our crisis workers picks it up, it will auto say, hi, I'm here now. And so that way, that young person knows it's an advocate that's ready to talk to them because we told them that's what they could expect. And then when we leave conversations, we also just set those expectations as well. If you need anything, you can always call back or reach back out through other platforms. But as I mentioned, we start conversations as new. So letting them know, hey, just if you reach back out, we're going to start this like a new conversation. Okay. Any questions I'm missing in the chat as I go? I will have to catch that in a minute.
No.
Okay, so when we're pivoting over to email, a lot of that stuff I just shared still is relevant and still is some things to consider. Some other stuff I just want to note is that email traditionally, whether it's someone emailing you directly as part of your work or more broadly at like an info at kind of email address where you've got a whole team responding, it's really important again to set expectations. And even prior to doing that, like figure out what those expectations should be, determine how fast you can manage this inbox, and either set up that auto reply when someone emails that says, hey, we'll get to this in 24 hours or we'll get to this in 2 days. And if you need something sooner, call, text, do whatever here. That way a young person just knows and they're not like waiting in the wings. And if you aren't using an auto reply, that's totally fine. But another way to kind of set that expectation is to publicly post that somewhere, whether that's on your website or your social media, that we respond to emails within 24 to 48 hours. Something like that, just so the expectation is known. Emails as well, if evaluation is part of your work here. In emails, it's very easy to add in a signature line, like a survey or something, to get the same kind of information you might for a chat and text. Okay. Now I'm going to pivot over to the ones that are public facing, right? All of the ones I just shared have their private conversations between between two people, unless somebody's looking over your shoulder. These are public facing digital platforms, so different things need to be taken into consideration. So these are the, your website, social media, forums. They're really, really, really important about spreading awareness, engaging, getting young people to know a lot about your organization, and in some cases too, directing them to a different part of that service or that platform to receive crisis intervention. But really, like, the key thing with any of these places is to ensure that you're moving that conversation to a private space. So consider how you can redirect that, right? So if somebody is posting a comment in response to something that you posted on like Instagram or something, or TikTok, it's important to say, hey, thanks so much for reaching out. I'm really sorry to hear that you're going through that. I would love to talk to you more about it. Why don't you send me a message, or I'm going to send you a message here and we can talk about it. If you are only providing crisis intervention over the phone, you can provide the phone number. So just pivoting it is what's key. And again, kind of the comment about emails, consider how you can respond to these and what's timely, to just ensure that you're responding to young people either as fast as possible or in the time frame that you told them they could expect. Okay. And then just in terms of moderation, so some platforms give you this ability. We do this on our online forum, like Christopher mentioned. That is a place where things are publicly posted. But what we do is we have a buffer. So when it's posted, our crisis team has to moderate that in between, take out any publicly identifiable information that was shared, and so essentially sanitize it, and then they can publicly post it for everybody to see. That is really with the young person's best interest. We're protecting their confidentiality. In addition, any potential safety ramifications that could come from sharing their info publicly. Okay. And then social media in particular, and I'm going to let Christopher jump in here too if I miss something, for sure. It's really, really important to provide instructions for emergencies when there's no time to wait to connect. And as I mentioned, with the more general public facing platforms, redirect if you need to, or if you're not allowed to communicate over certain platforms. Differs organization to organization. We do not do that. We redirect because we have a channel or 5 channels where crisis workers are ready and able to respond. And we know that we can't be sitting in the comments all the time or answering DMs at all hours of the day at this time. If you can, that is great. But if you don't have that ability, just redirect to where you can. And as I mentioned before, just use judgment with replying, make the replies general, direct them to the right place. Do not include information about yourself, right? Don't make a public post that says, hey, call myself. Maybe DM them that. And let's see. Yeah, just follow your organization's policies, obviously, whether you're allowed to use direct messages to connect with a client or a young person. This is tricky because sometimes we hear from young people that this is the only platform that they can communicate that's not like monitored, or they're not worried about someone seeing. So if that is an option that is available to you, and like through your organization's policies, or a young person says that's what they prefer, do what you can to work within that space. Um, a couple other pros of like direct messaging through these platforms is you'll get like the scene, you'll get the read receipt. So you'll be able to know if young people are receiving the information that you give them.
I do want to add, Sam, I guess a couple of things. One is that it's important to distinguish that we use an auto response, which is not the same as bots. Like Sam mentioned, it's really important that we actually have real people who are going in and like removing the personal information, or like in the case with responding to DMs, like we do get lots and lots of DMs. Most of the time, I would say like 95% of the time, a young person is not using the DMs in an actual emergency, which is great. It's usually like before they're trying to take action, or they're still like learning information. So it's a really incredible opportunity for us to like to intervene in what's ever happening and try to provide the resources we can. But one thing that I have seen, and I don't have any actual data on this because of the way that we provide our services, but when we do have the opportunity to respond to a DM and let a young person know like why we can't necessarily support them, almost in every case, I do get a response that's like, oh, thank you, or I will, which makes me at least feel like that person is going to try to take the opportunity to either reach out to us through another channel or use another resource like our forum. A lot of young people are really tech savvy, so they appreciate and understand why that like some things wouldn't work if it's a security precaution or things like that. Clarifying really does go both ways. And when we talk about establishing rapport, which has been mentioned several times, this is a great way to help young people understand that like, hey, we're in your corner. We're not here to pass any judgment, but we just want to make sure that you know that like first and foremost, safety is what we care about the most. So we want to make sure you're safe. We want to make sure we're doing right by you and not putting you in any type of danger or putting you at risk by like doing this through a social media service where we don't control the security ourselves. So I just wanted to make sure to add that as we're talking about like responding to DM specifically or messages in comments.
Super helpful, Christopher. Thank you. Okay, so the next thing we have up on the docket is to do a practice scenario. I have in here to kind of engage and respond through the chat. We don't have a huge group, so we can do some of this verbally if you all are more comfortable with that, but chat, verbal, whatever. We're just going to keep it within a time frame to ensure we can get through everything. So let's focus on this for maybe like 10 minutes and then we'll move on. Okay. So moving on to that practice kind of scenario, and it's okay if you don't want to share, if you just ponder it based on what we've shared about lessons learned. So I'm going to read this out loud, and I can maybe put it in. Maybe Christopher, you can put it in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So Sierra, a 17-year-old young person that you've worked with before, sends you a text that she ran away from home 2 weeks ago and she's sleeping on an old friend's couch. He recently made her start pulling her weight, and he's getting increasingly controlling. Sierra wants to go somewhere else, but doesn't know where to turn. She says she doesn't want to go back home because her mom is physically and emotionally abusive. So, given that context and crisis intervention in general, there's plenty of things we need to think about with what's being shared. But what are some other things to be mindful of when we're talking about specifically supporting her over a digital platform like texting that she reached out through? So, no wrong answers here, just curious about your thoughts. Also, curious about things that have worked for you that we haven't mentioned today. Feel free to unmute and share or put your thoughts in the chat. And we'll read out the chat ones as we get them. Take a minute to think about it. there anything we need to think about safety wise for a person that is getting increasingly controlling? See in the chat, Kay says, I would suggest considering a shelter. Yeah, it's a good option. Do we know how long Sierra has to talk to us? Let's see, Tashi says, maybe ask more questions about what's meant by pulling her weight. Yep, very good. That could have a lot of connotations, especially paired with increasing control. Sudali says, validate what tough situation she must be going through. Yeah.
I have a question, Sam.
Yeah.
I'm asking this question because I don't come from the crisis services. Like I'm sometimes misunderstand this. So I just want to, is it when in this situation, is it important to know, like, since she's left home and is staying with a friend, if she still has her own phone service or if this friend has like helped her with like getting a phone, if that then gives them kind of like some back end access to these text messages and see if it's more appropriate to reach out a different way?
Yeah, it totally could be. That's very good insight. Especially if we know like something, more information, if like a young person's in a violent relationship, that could be very helpful to know. Or if there's domestic violence going on within their family unit and their family member pays for their phone.
Mhm.
Actively listen when asking, assessing out how safe Sierra feels. Yep. Is her current location safe, right? Asking if she has a safe place to talk right now. Yep. Um, what about um like if this person, kind of to Christopher's point, has the ability to see her text? Could we share that or ask her that question of, are you worried about does this person monitor your phone? Are you concerned that they would see these text messages and get upset? If yes, hey, I encourage you to delete this combo when we're done, or if that person's around, maybe delete them as you go. This is something you can do too to turn off your notifications, right? Make things quiet, not get the little ping. Those are some things we could suggest. Um, Asking, right? To Christopher's point, is texting the best way to get in touch? Or do you maybe have like a Snapchat or something where I can reach you and we can talk in a safer space? I saw a comment earlier that I hearted but didn't share out loud. In Instagram, there's a vanish mode too. So you can talk and those messages will disappear in the DMs as well. Very good suggestion. Awesome. Great. So a lot of this work is the same type of crisis intervention you would be doing in any way, shape, or form. Just a couple little things to be aware of as you're communicating actively with someone, and then also if you're setting up this service as more of like a robust platform. One other thing we could note here too is creating like a safe word or something, if that's a concern that sometimes her friend or her boyfriend or somebody else uses the phone too and might pose as that person at a later time.
Mhm.
Okay, let's keep it rolling then. Christopher, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you for a little bit.
Yeah, how about that? So I want to go over some of the prevention and other types of resources. I mentioned these at the beginning of the call, but kind of, I think there are some things that we obviously like identify as prevention methods, but there are other really great resources that we and a lot of you offer that are super educational in ways for people to learn about what's going on and what's available to them in the world. So starting off with our educational and outreach materials, which you can order for free. These are available. I posted a link in the chat and I'll make sure to share those again. It's everything that you see on this page, except all of this material is old. It's all been updated. And like I mentioned before, towards the end of this month, it'll all be updated to have a fresh new look. We'll also add lots of more resources. We recognize that like right now, the materials that we have are at about 2020 and it's 2024. Another thing is that we worked really closely with our youth advisory board, and the consensus was generally that like if I was struggling, I would not see these posters. And I just wouldn't, if I was just walking along the street or walking through my school, like I would not look at these posters. So we've updated them to include real people, real young people who are on our youth advisory board or have worked with us through different campaigns and come to us from other organizations so that we can show a variety of young people who would look for help. And these are not kids with backpacks on train tracks by the dumpster or any of that other very stereotypical imagery about a young person who's experiencing homelessness or any other related trauma. So again, that like will be updated to include videos that you can post on TikTok or on YouTube Shorts, things like that. Well, and again, having a new look for everything. We are, because we've introduced new materials, we are a bit behind in fulfilling the orders. If you have placed an order for these free materials and it's been more than 4 weeks, which I think that we shouldn't have any of those, but if for some reason yours hasn't been fulfilled in that time, at the end, I'll provide my email. And if you could please send me a direct message and I will get that mailed out to you this Thursday so that you can get those as soon as possible. Up next is our Let's Talk Runaway Prevention curriculum. This is a hugely, an incredible curriculum that is based in life skills. So it's recently been updated to have 16 modules so that we can talk about things that are more topical today, like protecting yourself on social media, understanding and appreciating things like gender identity and sexual orientation and how to have conversations about those things. It's really appropriate for youth as young as ages as the age of 12, and we also offer that in Spanish. This curriculum again has recently been updated, so even if it's something that you've used in the past, we have like taken the time to make sure that there are new things to learn from, and we are always super interested to hearing from you about how you've implemented the curriculum in any of your programs, if you've used it, what has worked, what hasn't worked. But the whole goal of this is to increase knowledge and prevention and about prevention and resources. We want to do all that we can to actually prevent young people from leaving. Like I mentioned kind of towards the beginning of the call, we get a lot of young people who are still at home. I feel like the majority of the people who reach out to us are still at home. So this is a great resource, especially if you partner with places like libraries, like schools, it's a great curriculum to introduce to them to help them understand the best ways to help prevent a runaway occurrence or for a young person to experience homelessness. This is a free curriculum and it's at your own pace. You don't have to do it in order. We get a lot of people who will download the curriculum, but focus on the things that are relevant at the time. So like maybe it's more appropriate at the time to talk about internet safety and dating safety. So they pull that curriculum and then they go back and revisit the other ones later. It's really built for you to be super accessible, and the interface is super easy to understand. The next one is our database, which I mentioned earlier. It is to me, it's like almost criminal to not be in our database because we are helping people in your own community reach out and find you. And also, if you're a national organization, we help point people in. We're not trying to be the only organization who's out here helping people. It is paramount that we make connection with other organizations and help people find the best resource. So we recognize that if we're not going to be able to help someone at the level that you are, we are definitely going to connect them to you, but we can't do that if you're not a part of our database. So I would highly encourage you, if you're not in our database or if you haven't updated your information with us since like COVID or even in the last year, and you know that there are changes in the way that those programs work, an expansion in the ages of people who you're able to support, especially again, we have been getting a lot of contacts from younger people, things like that. We really want to make sure all of that gets updated. And there's a shortened link that you can use, just 1-800-runaway.org/database. That'll take you directly to the page to either get that information updated or to get you added into our database. And again, if you we leave our mailboxes open to you. If you have questions about the way that it works, anything like that, then please just send us an email. We're more than happy to make sure we answer any questions that you have or facilitate getting that taken care of as quickly as possible. Up next is our Let's Talk podcast, which I host. We offer about 6 to 12 episodes a season, just depending on the timing. But these episodes really cover kind of everything. So we talk about young people about everything from mental health to the specific things that they experienced along their journey. We've got the opportunity to hear some and really incredible stories, things that like have really been eye-opening, things that I have never, as a 33-year-old person, ever even thought of, like a young person who was 20 years old, who got medically discharged from the army for PTSD and then experienced homelessness afterwards. Like it's just, that's something I had never experienced. And it's one of our most popular episodes because a lot of other people are not prepared to help someone who's experienced that. So it's all kinds of stories and things like that to help people get a better understanding of what it's like to be in those shoes, either as a young person who's going through this or as a service provider who directly works with young people every single day. Um, the podcast is available on all streaming platforms, or well, not all of them, but all of the free ones, anyways. And you can always, of course, listen to that directly on our website for free. We have transcripts available for those, and we are super fortunate that most of these streaming networks like Spotify and Apple Podcasts have a transcript button that will allow you to see those transcripts in real time as we're going. So I also would like to, we are always looking for a guest for the podcast because we plan these out pretty far and ahead. Like we're already looking for guests to be featured in our November episode for National Runaway Prevention Month. We do about 4 or 5, depending on how many weeks there are. So if you're interested in specifically talking about your organization, very specifically, if you work with a marginalized community, especially a highly marginalized community, like if you work specifically within the trans community, if you're working with Indigenous people or people who identify as Two-Spirit, it's like highly rural areas or places that are not connected to the mainland, like Hawaii and Alaska, we really encourage you to reach out to us because you offer us a great opportunity to learn about these very highly specialized forms of supporting young people in these areas. And I think with that, here is our contact information. I will make sure to repost those links in our chat, but we do have an extra few minutes, so I want to make sure if there are any questions that anyone has. Sam, if you have any additional information that you would like to share, especially if I missed anything, or any other links you think that would be helpful here, let me know. But I will turn it back over to you to wrap things up.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. No, not much to add. Just kind of in closing, one, appreciate everybody here and the participation. It's been really great. If you have any tips that we could benefit from, I'm certainly open to hearing those and seeing how we can employ them in our practice. There's always space to learn. So that point, and then also, just echoing or circling back to what Christopher shared at the top of the presentation, right? Young people prefer digital means of contact. So it's really important that we start to adapt to that to be able to meet them where they're at, one. Two, we also find, and this is where I lost my train of thought earlier, that young people not only prefer digital means of contact, it's also how they learn about us. It's like an overwhelming majority of young people, I think it's like 95% or something, Christopher, learn about us through the internet or social media, or word of mouth that kind of bleeds into the social media stuff. So it's really, really important to be in this space. And with that too, right? If that's how people are learning about us and that is how we might be serving them, it's important to recognize that prevention or engagement, awareness, prevention, and intervention, they all weave together really, really closely. So with that, I know we shared and talked a lot about intervention strategies, but don't sleep on the prevention ones. The resources that we have through social media or our materials like outreach cards, they can go a long way in getting folks to the right place in order to provide that crisis intervention.
Literally every single member of our youth advisory board says that the prevention part is what was missing for them and could have probably completely change the trajectory of their circumstance. So Sam is not lying. Literally, it's a huge, and as an organization, we have moved and continue to move towards being about prevention first and making sure that we're doing everything we can to make people aware.
We do have 5 minutes for questions. I see some coming through the chat, but if you're more of a words person, feel free to ask. If not, we release you, and we appreciate you joining us today.
Yes. A copy of the presentation will be available where you registered, 1-800-runaway.org/spring2024. You'll also get an email that'll go out towards the end of the day. And we encourage you, if you have other team members that you think would benefit from this, please share out that video, post it on your social media channels. You never know who can benefit from hearing these. So thank you very much again.
Thank you. Thank you.